Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the local procurement workshop. I'm Mike Hine. I'm the Executive Director for the Chamber of Commerce. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. I'd like to thank all the cities for agreeing to cooperate in this informative session we're going to put on here. Just so you know, this is for businesses to find out how you can do business with the city. We're trying to educate you here today. It's for all you businesses, chamber members and non-members. And if you're not a member, I want to talk to you, because why not? So this is that's the reason for the meeting. It's not a political meeting. It's nothing to do with that. This is about giving you information so that you can possibly get some more business with the city. There will be an opportunity for questions and answers at the end of the presentations. We've got two separate presentations. We're going to have the cities come up and present a joint presentation. And then we've got some local businesses who have been successful in working with the city to talk about their stories and how they do their business. So hopefully at the end of this, you'll walk out with some more information and advance your business in some way, shape, or form. Just a couple introductions, and I'm not going to introduce the politicians in the House today. Sorry. We're going to stick to the important people. So right here we have Sheena McLeod. She's the Manager of Finance for the City of Coquitlam. Dina Trudeau. She is Purchasing Manager for the City of Coquitlam. We have Paul Rockwood. Over there, Paul, with the nice beard growing, is the General Manager of Financial Services for the City of Port Moody. We have Karen Gramata, Director of Finance for the City of Port Coquitlam, and Karen Lostrop with the City of Port Coquitlam also. So big welcome for all these people. Cool. So as I said, we're going to start with a presentation from Sheena and Dina. They're going to do it on behalf of all the cities, I believe. Is that correct? And then we're going to open up the Q&A. Then we're going to talk to our gentlemen, our folks over here, and they can speak. They're so enthusiastic too. Rick, smile a little bit. Come on, man. There you go. And then we'll try to get you out here by about 1:30 at the latest. I have a conference call at 2, so I'll definitely be out here by then. There's still some food up the back there and drink if you're going to help yourself. But without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sheena McLeod, who is a chartered accountant and worked for the City of Coquitlam for 23 years, and Dina, who is a supply chain management professional who sits on the national and provincial boards for her industry association. She's been with the city for 7 years. So ladies, over to you two for your presentation. Thank you.
Wow, well, good morning, I guess, or good afternoon. I guess we're close to both. Thank you all for coming out. We certainly appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And I can't believe the turnout. I just wish we could get this kind of turnout for budget meetings. I guess this is a more interesting topic. Anyway, as Mike said, our purpose here today is to talk and provide some education. We want to share with you some information about how all of the cities do their business, in the hope that with some better understanding, perhaps in the future, we can do more work together. So, as was brought up, this is a presentation on behalf of all 3 cities. Although it's being presented by City of Coquitlam staff, we have worked with our counterparts from Port Coquitlam and Port Moody to make sure that this is reflective generally of how all of us do business. It's very similar. Now, there were some handouts. I hope everybody picked up handouts when they came in. There is some information that's takeaway, like our contact information and some website addresses that's on that handout, so it would be really good if you had one of those before you left. So, just getting started, as you all know, the cities provide a really wide variety of services to our community. Our residents rely on us to provide protective services, police, fire, by law enforcement. We also provide all the public works, roads and transportation, all of the utilities, water, sewer, garbage collection. We also provide some softer services like parks and recreation. We have all sorts of facilities and programs that we provide. And then we also have a number of support departments that assist those frontline services, all the usual things that you'll find in most businesses, things like finance departments, computer departments, and human resources departments. So we have a really wide variety of services we provide, much more than most businesses. To do that, we need a lot of different supply and service. And we buy all sorts of very specialized things, things like fire trucks, equipment, turnout gear for firefighters. We have services like towing. Then we buy all the regular stuff that most businesses buy, things like office supplies and computers. But we also buy other things like pool chemicals and grass seed and fertilizer. And It's just a huge variety of things. One of the biggest areas of our business is infrastructure. Cities have billions of dollars worth of infrastructure, roads and pipes and buildings that we rely on every day to provide services to the community. So we need to make sure we're able to build those. We have to maintain them throughout their life, and we have to replace them when they get old. And to do that, we buy a lot of construction services. So those are really complicated. You can see from all these different things that we do, it's a very wide variety of stuff that we buy. And the one thing that's common in everything that we buy is we have one primary goal, and that is to get the very best value we can for our residents in the community. And there's a whole bunch of different ways that we do that. The first way that we go about trying to create value is through cooperation. We're in a very unique position. I'm sure everybody in this room believes in the fundamental principle that as volume goes up, unit price goes down. We all know that if we go to Costco and we buy 48 rolls of toilet paper, the unit price of that toilet paper is going to be quite a bit less than if we go to Thrifty's and buy a 2-pack, right? That principle holds true for everything that the cities do as well. And we're in a very unique position to take advantage of that. Like most businesses, if you have a similar business, you're probably competitors. You would never share secrets and volumes to get a better deal for both of you because you're competing with each other. Cities are different. We're defined by our boundaries. We provide very similar suite of services to our residents, but we cooperate. We cooperated on this presentation. We've got our counterparts helping us with the presentation. We cooperate in volumes. So some of the purchases that the city does, we do through other organizations, and we do it through a cooperative purchasing group. There is a group made up of all the different municipalities in the Lower Mainland called the Vancouver Region Cooperative Purchasing Group. Did I get that right? It's a big, long acronym. And what we do is we cooperate in terms of the resources to do the bids. So we share the staffing resources to do the work, and then we add our volumes together to get a lower unit prices for all the cities. So that's one of the ways that we go about trying really hard to achieve value for our community. Another way that we try to achieve value is through competition. I'm pretty sure that all the business people around here will also agree with the principle that more competition leads to lower prices. We've seen that in the computer environment. The cost of a computer with all the different kinds of computers that are out there now is way less than it was a few years ago. The cost of phone plans is way less. We've got more competition in that environment. The price goes down. It happens all the time, and it's exactly the same for the city. We know that if we go out and put a competitive bid out there, and we ask a whole bunch of businesses, do you want to supply services to us? They want to do that. And they will reduce their price and put together a better package because they want our business. We see it all the time. If we put out a bid proposal and we get 2 responses, we don't see very much variation. If we get 12, we see big differences. And it helps us to get a better value for our citizens. So we do it very, very regularly, as often as we can. Now, if you think about that, in theory, if competition reduces price, then we should competitively bid everything that we do because we want to get the best price. We want to get the best value for our citizens. Well, yes and no, because there is a cost to competition. Competition relies on process, and cities, unfortunately, have very limited resources. We only have so many professionals in our purchasing area that can do this kind of work, and we have to use those resources wisely. Right? There is a huge cost to the city to put together a bid package. We've got to build the documents, and they're pretty formal documents that describe all the needs. We have to put out the advertisements to make sure that they're available to people to bid. We have to collect all the different proposals. Sometimes we'll get a dozen or more. Sometimes they could be this thick, depending on how complicated the purchase is. And then we have to go through the process of reading all of those and evaluating them. So there's a tremendous time involvement for us to do that work. There's also a tremendous time involvement from all the bidders because it's not easy to put together that package that's this thick, right? And we try not to be wasteful of our time, but we try not to be wasteful of others' time either because we know that when we put out one of those bid packages, only one wins. and everybody went to the work of putting those documents out there. So we need to be really careful about how we utilize our time. So how we create value for our residents is we cooperate, we competitively bid, and we use our time wisely and make sure that we actually do things that create real value, not just more bureaucracy. Okay? So if we know that we want to create value, how do we go about measuring value? There's lots of different ways that we measure value. And obviously, the first and foremost that we all use to measure value is price. But price is a complicated thing. Price or cost is more than just that initial price, right? It involves the initial cost that you have to buy something. It also includes what's the delivery cost, because that's added to. What's the installation cost? That's added to. We also look at things like quality. If we can buy a better quality product that will last us longer and reduce the replacement frequency, that's a better value, and we're all about getting value. Also, if we buy a product that maybe takes less work, or let's say we buy a piece of equipment that can be operated by one staff member rather than two, well, there's a huge value there in terms of time savings, because time is money, and it counts. All of that value goes into our evaluation. We also look at things like service. If we're looking at different products or different things, what is the service life of that particular thing that we're buying? Does one company have better service response? Can they be here quicker? Are they more responsive to our needs? Do they have lower service costs? Because sometimes the service cost over the life of something you buy is much bigger than the initial cost. We consider all of those things. We're a city. We're also very interested in sustainability. If we can pick a product that uses less energy in the long run, that saves us long-term money, saves us on our electrical bill. We also look at things like, do we have lower greenhouse gas emissions, smaller carbon footprint? All of the cities are set up to meet targets for greenhouse gas emission reduction. So we care about those kind of things. Those are part of that value calculation that we do. One final thing to consider is that cities are in the business of improving the quality of life of our residents. So we will look at other things. We'll look at what we call value-added things that your company can bring to the table. Let's say we have some kind of a bid out there, and we get 4 responses back, and they're all almost the same. Like, they all can deliver the same product, same kind of service, price is about the same. And one of those companies in our community has built into their corporate culture. They invest a whole bunch of time and energy in a local charity, maybe the local food bank. Wow, that's kind of neat. We'd like to know that, because if everything else was equal, that might be the company we chose to do business with, right? That's not going to win you a bid if you don't have a good product and you don't have good service and you don't have a good price. But if everything else was equal, we'd want to know that, because we want to work with people who bring value to our community. And those kind of things are values. And cities are in a unique position to be able to think about that kind of thing. Now, having said that, I should probably put out there that in all my time here, I have never seen all the bids being equal. There's always some discernible difference. But in the case that that's what happens, it is possible. And we look at those things. Another thing I probably would be remiss if I didn't point out is that for businesses that are local, like you're all local business that want to work with the city, you have a natural advantage in working with the city. When we evaluate based on value, you're closer. Chances are your delivery costs are going to be lower. Chances are your service response time is going to be higher. Chances are your service costs to us are going to be less. Time's money. If your people aren't driving all over the place, it's going to save us. And we look at those things in that value equation when we decide who is it that provides the most value for us to work with. So those are important things. So if we know that we want value, and we know how we're going to measure value, so how do we go about doing this? Well, all 3 of the cities work in a similar kind of a way. What we do is we have a varied way of actually going through, or a varied methodology of going through our purchases. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to match the level of effort with the value of what we're purchasing. So there is a whole realm of things that cities purchase that are very small dollars, lots of them, very small, and what we do with that is we all use purchase cards. So let's just say we have a crew that's going out to do some kind of a repair, and they need a tool. It doesn't happen to be a tool that we keep in stores because we don't use it very often. Our guys are empowered to jump in their truck on the way to the work site, stop at Canadian Tire, jump out, get the tool, use their credit card, their city purchase card, and go buy what they need to buy. Get on with the job, reduce the red tape. It's small value. That's what we want to do because we want to make sure we create value by using our resources wisely. Now, they use purchase cards, and by purchase cards, I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with those, but purchase cards look just like a credit card, and they act mostly just like a credit card. But what's different is if I have a credit card and I go into a store, I can buy anything in that credit card, in that store that I would like, up to the value of my credit limit, and the store will take it. The beautiful thing about a purchase card for a city is it's just like a credit card, except that we can put a whole bunch of parameters around that credit card and say they're not allowed to use it for anything. They can only use it for certain kinds of things. For example, in the city of Coquitlam, our purchase cards do not allow you to go into a liquor store. They do not allow you to book travel or hotels. They do not allow you to buy gas at a gas station. And the reason for that is the city buys our gas in bulk, we store it at our works yard, and we want our staff to use the cheaper gas. We don't want them going and paying retail somewhere else when we've got a better deal. We're always trying to create value. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to reduce red tape, enable people to get their job done, get it done efficiently, but we want to have some parameters around that, and we all use those. The next level, for a little bit more money, when we're buying something a little bit bigger, and we all have a little bit different limits because we're different sizes. I mean, Coquitlam is 4 times the size of Port Moody. Obviously, we hit these limits, the bigger limits, quicker. But what we want to do is add more effort, more staff effort, the more value we're buying. So we get to that sort of middle range, and we have purchases where our departments are empowered to go out and do what they need to do. They know their business, they know what they need, and we want them to be productive and go get their job done. But they're encouraged and asked to. They will be phoning around for informal quotations. They ask around prices. They want to know where they're getting their stuff, who they're getting it from, and they want to know the prices, and they want to know the service that they're going to get. And they phone around and they ask for those things. And, you know, they're very motivated to get the best deal. Every one of our departments, bar none, I'll tell you, tells you that their budget's too small. They wish they had more money to do all the things that they would like to do for the community. And so they are frugal, and they phone around and they check and they investigate this stuff to try and make those choices. But we don't yet publicly advertise those things because it's the value of those purchases is not worth the level of work of us putting out the bid, evaluating all the proposals, and asking every one of you to put in one of those bids. That takes you a lot of time away from your work, and only one's going to win. Okay? When we get to the big stuff, we go to, we publicly advertise. And for all of us, legislatively, we must do this at $75,000. Some of us do it a little bit lower, some of us do it at this level. But because we have to do it legislatively at $75,000 doesn't mean we won't do it at a lower value. If we believe there's value to be gained by going out to a publicly advertised process, even if it's below that limit, we will do that. As a matter of fact, in Coquitlam, right now on our webpage, we have a bid out there for some kind of a planning study. We believe it will be well below our normal threshold for publicly advertising, but we thought there was a value to do that, and it's out there. So there's also a little bit of judgment applied to these things. You can go lower, but you must do this at certain levels. So when it comes to these publicly offered tenders or bid opportunities, we have 2 main types. The first is tenders. Now, we will use a tender when we're doing something that is really highly specified. We know exactly what the specifications of what we want are. So the best example I can think of is we tender all of our road projects. So we're going to pave from here to here. It's going to be this wide. It's going to be this thick. Probably, I don't actually know anything about roads, and it's going to have some certain standard of pavement quality, and everybody that does paving can probably meet that standard. So the laws of tendering are very clear. If you put out a tender package, the lowest qualified bidder gets the job. No choice. That's the way it works. That's the law, and that's what we do. More often than not, the ones where we put a lot of work into the evaluation are what I like to call the RFs. They're requests for proposal, requests for quotes, requests for information. What that's all about is we're saying the city has a need. We define that need. Here's the need. This is what it looks like. This is what we want. And the reason we're going out to market is we don't necessarily know. We can't specify what the answer is. We're looking for the expertise in the market and the capability in the market and the creativity and the innovation. We're asking you to partner with us and help us get the best solution. And that's where we're going to look at all those values. And we're going to go, okay, who's got the best answer to our problem? And we're going to evaluate those really, really closely. Okay? The one final way that we go about purchasing is every now and again, from time to time, we will go directly to a supplier and what we call a sole source. We don't do that often because that gets away from our principle of we want competition. However, it does happen from time to time that that's the best thing to do. And the times that that happens is, a really good example is in an emergency. So let's say we have a pipe breaks in the library, water's spewing in, the carpet's being damaged, the bookshelves the water's rising, the bookshelves are starting to, get damaged. We're at risk of losing all our books. It might be a big job. It might be well over that threshold that says we should bid. We're not going to bid because we're not going to waste time. We're going to have more damage if we wait. We are going to move quickly. We are going to access those companies we know that can get there quick, that can do the job we need. We're going to pick up the phone, and the first party that can do what we need when we need it and get there, they're going to get that work. And our policies state that this is what we do. Because obviously it makes no sense to spend a bunch of time bidding. We'll get more damage, and it'll cost us more in the long run, right? The other place where that can happen is every now and again we will sole source something that normally you'd think we would bid out, but we'll do that when we know for sure that there is one supplier out there that has such a competitive advantage that it's not fair to ask other people to bid because we know they can't win. We're just wasting their time and costing them money. And that's unfair and that's wrong. So we don't do that. And the kinds of times when that happens is when you have sort of sometimes we have projects that are multi-phase. So we pick a supplier for phase one, and by doing phase one, say that consultant or whoever's helping us with that, gets such learning and experience from that process that they have such an advantage over anybody else that for phase two, you're really going to go back to them. Because the time that we would have to spend to take another consultant and have them have all of the learning from phase one would cost us a lot of money. We pay those people by the hour. So if we have to spend 20 or 50 or 100 hours getting them up to speed, there's no value there. And remember, we're trying to get value. And we're trying to be respectful of all of our bidders' time and resources as well. We don't want to waste somebody's time if they have no chance of winning. Because if the value statement or the value calculation is very clear, it's not right to waste their time. Okay? So that's all the very general stuff, and now we're going to move into the more specifics about how you actually do this with Coquitlam and what we're looking for. And I'm going to turn that over to Dina because she's our purchasing expert, and she does this stuff every day. Oh.
Thank you. Good morning. So as Sheena mentioned, in purchasing, our role in the organizations is to assist the departments to get the supplies and services they need to support the many programs and services that they provide to our citizens. We administrate all the steps in the competitive bid process, from creation of the documents to advertising, managing the flow of information, the closing, the evaluation, and issue of the purchase order. We collect data, we analyze and strategize on the city's spending on a regular basis. Public procurement is highly regulated, and these are examples of the different policies and legislation that we need to comply with. While they're all a little bit different in terms of the thresholds at which they apply, they are essentially the same: to ensure we conduct the business of the cities in a manner that is fair, equal, and transparent to all suppliers. We ensure that all the criteria and relevant information is fully disclosed and accurate. We need to avoid any conflict of interest and prevent bias. So the first one there is the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. FOI means that we have to be transparent and we are accountable to the public. We also need to protect information that companies provide to us in their submission. The Northwest Partnership Trade Agreement is NWPTA, we call it, and that was formerly known as TILMA. That's a partnership agreement between the provinces of BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan to ensure an open process that does not restrict trade between our provinces, and in turn, to ensure that our BC businesses are also able to bid on contracts in those provinces. The Agreement on Internal Trade, AIT, also applies to local government in Canada and contributes to reduction in purchasing costs and the development of a strong economy in the context of transparency and efficiency. The Competition Act governs the manner in which we all conduct business in Canada. Competitive bidding laws and contract law. The cities can be challenged at any time by any company who feels that they have been not treated fairly by either the process or by the outcome. And of course, our city's procurement policies. While the thresholds in each of the cities are a little bit different based on our size, our policies are endorsed by our mayors and councils that delegates the acquisition spending authority and defines the process by various levels of staff to commit expenses to our city budgets. The purchasing staff ensures that our bid processes are conducted in the spirit of all of these principles. So how do you find about bid opportunities with the cities? Well, you might want to add some of these website addresses to your internet favorites. The first one listed is the BC Bid website. This is where most local and provincial government and crown corporations in BC will post their bid opportunities. And if your business buys a subscription, they'll also email you notification of any new bids that are issued in the categories that you have added to your profile. Over 600 organizations are registered, and this is the best site to find all of our city's opportunities. Some of us also post on Civic Info BC, and you may also want to check the city's website. That website address is listed on the slide. In Coquitlam, we will post our bids on the top 3 of those website addresses. Most bids are posted for at least 2 weeks, so you want to check at least once a week. We all have some procurement that isn't large enough to warrant a formal bid process. So this is the spending that is done on the city's purchase cards and with informal quotations, as Sheena had explained earlier in the presentation. If you have supplies and services you think the city might need, you are welcome to submit your marketing information to our purchasing departments, and we will distribute the information to the appropriate people in the departments that might use those supplies and services. When we have a need that matches, we will check in with those companies to see if they can provide us with a quote. And from time to time, we change suppliers based on those quotes. If we don't change, it's because we have confirmed that the current supplier is still providing us with the best value. So if you find a bid opportunity that you feel your business can fill, it's really important to review the bid document to see what we're asking for and how we will evaluate the bids. The evaluation criteria are clearly stated in the bid documents. There are usually about 5 criteria, and every one of them is important to you because your proposal will receive points based on the information you provide. Some businesses don't pay enough attention and then lose points, and as a result don't get the work. If you have questions, the document will tell you what to do. Questions need to be asked before the closing date, and you need to allow us time to answer them. Usually all questions will get answered and be posted or distributed so that all companies are on a level playing field and have the same information at the same time. The only time we wouldn't is if the answer is already in the bid document, and in that case, we will try to let you know where you can find the information. Each of the cities will do things a little bit differently, so some RFs and tenders will have mandatory criteria that must be met, such as strict submission timelines and specific forms that need to be submitted. Most tenders must also be submitted with a bid bond. Occasionally, we will require that your company attend a site visit so that you fully understand the conditions of the project or the complexity of what you're going to be bidding on. So ensure if there is any mandatory criteria that these are met. So once you've prepared your submission, review it, double check, and make sure you have responded to all of the criteria and given us all the information that was requested. If you want the city's business, you have to focus on what our need is. The evaluation team is usually made up of 2 to 5 staff from various areas in the city that will benefit from those supplies and services. For example, as Sheena had mentioned, if we're purchasing a fire truck, we will have technical members from the fire department that will be training and using that truck. We will include our fleet superintendent because his mechanics will be responsible for the repair and maintenance of those trucks, and we'll include a purchasing specialist. If we're selecting a park design team, we will include our city's parks planning and design experts, as well as our strategic initiatives team who will take over at the construction stage and deliver the park project at its completion. The team will read all of the proposals and evaluate them based on the criteria stated in the document, and record the scores and include notes about the reasons for the scores. Each proponent will receive points for each of the criteria, and you want to get as many points as you can. These criteria are weighted because some are more important than others. Price, service, quality, experience, references, they are all important, as well as sustainability and value-added benefits. We get a lot of proposals, and most of them are very good. You need to think about our process, and this is your best opportunity to present, market, and sell your business. And tell us about the advantages that your business will bring to the city. Help us to choose you. For every competitive bid process, the city usually receives a lot of really good submissions from a lot of great companies, and we can usually only pick one. We only wish we had more projects available and could work with all of those great companies. So just to give you a brief example, this is a bid process we closed, and the file has 9 submissions, great companies. We had to go through it. There was different types of product and manufacturers and constructors. It's for our covered dry floor sport facility. And so we go through that, and as Sheena is showing you the evaluation, we list all of the companies, we list all of the criteria, we put the notes in there about what they submitted to us.
Score at the end.
That's one evaluation. So we do take this very seriously because it represents a lot of your time and a lot of our time. So what if you are successful? Then we will meet with you to confirm the expectations of the city and make sure we both have a clear understanding of how those expectations will be met. If you are successful and going to be a contractor working on city property or equipment, you will be required to have a city's or Tri-Cities intermunicipal business license, WorkSafe BC coverage, and commercial general liability insurance. These requirements are not negotiable. In some cases, we might also require a prime contractor designation and an approved health and safety program. Workers going into sensitive and secure areas, like our public safety building, will also require security clearance. We may also be entering into a formal signed contract, or by issue of the city's purchase order, the city's standard terms and conditions, along with the PO, will form the contract. If you think about the worst case scenario, these requirements provide clarity and protect the company, the workers, and the cities. When we have good suppliers and contractors, we all benefit. We want every supplier, the city and staff, every dollar spent, and every project to be successful and something that we can all be proud of. We can usually award to only one company, so we will let all of the companies that submitted a proposal or tender know which company was awarded the contract or the project. So what if you are not successful this time? If you want more information, give us a phone call and we are prepared to give you some feedback about your proposal. However, we are not able to give you any details about the other bids or the winning bid. And that is part of the FOI piece, the protection and privacy, where we need to protect the information that companies provide to us in their submissions. And if you're not successful this time, we encourage you to try again at the next opportunity.
Okay, that's getting us close to what we wanted to say to you, but just a few key things that I think you should remember, and they're included in your handout. The most important thing is, where do you find those opportunities? They are at BC Bid, Civic Info, and the city's websites. And the websites are listed in your handout so that you have them. When you find something that you want to bid on, those evaluation criteria are your friend. Read those documents very carefully, because what you want to do is give us very thorough information so that we have the best possible opportunity to choose you and to notice that you're the best company for us to deal with. We like to have relationships with our suppliers. It makes all of us work better. So we want to know about you. We want to know what's out there. Okay? And if all else fails, call us. We've provided our contact information for all 3 cities in your handout. If you have a question, feel free to call us. More than happy to help. So here's our contact information. It's in your handout. And are there any questions?
Before we get going with the questions, a big round of applause for the ladies. Thank you very much for some really good information.
You can sit down.
You can sit down for a minute. So Aaron Robinson over here has got a microphone. He will, if you've got a question, put your hand up. He'll walk over to you. We are webcasting this. That's why we're using microphones, so we can record it forever and ever. So be careful what you ask. So anybody got a question on any of that information? We got all 3 cities here to answer them. Question up at the back there. If you'd identify yourself and your company you're from, and then ask your question, that'd be great. Thank you.
My name is Nafis Chaudhry, and I'm an accountant, and my office is on Anson Avenue. My question is if there is any mechanism in place where city protect a small business compared to mega corporations, because their cost structure will be totally different than, for example, Costco. They will not be able to buy it, and as the evaluation criteria shows, the price is number 1, so must be the loss of weight on the price. So how is there a mandate for city to protect a small business, or they just say, let's go with Costco, for example?
We don't have a particular mandate to protect anyone. It is our obligation to provide an open, fair bidding competition for everyone, so everybody can bid. The reason that our policy is set out on value is so that we can look at all those kind of things, because there are different values that local organizations bring. They're closer, they're easier to get to. And price is not the only thing that we look at, and so that should help smaller business. We look at all sorts of other criteria. Okay?
Question right here.
I'm just curious about the business license.
Can you identify yourself first?
Oh,
please.
Daryl Ord, Dior Sales Consulting. I have a business in Coquitlam with a Coquitlam business license. You mentioned that we needed a license in the city that we're doing business, so do I have to have a business license in Port Moody, for example, to bid on that job?
You don't have to have a business license to bid on a job. You need to have a business license in the community where you're resident. But if you are doing work in a civic facility, usually you have to have a business license for that city. But we do offer an intermunicipal business license. So when you renew your business license, you can pick an intermunicipal one. I think the price is marginally different only. And we share the revenue that comes from that. And that way you'd be protected to work in all 3 cities. So good plug for our intermunicipal business license. Thank you.
It's a good program. You should take advantage of it. Next was Sherry.
Sherry. My name is Sherry Carroll, and I'm a former councillor for the City of Port Coquitlam. My question to you is that one of the comments that I got a lot was from printing companies, small printing companies. They wanted to know how they could get into the procurement process for their printing business. And I know very well that most of the communities have their own printing facilities. Are there any, so much point having bid opportunities when you already yourself? What other functions do you do yourself that there's no point bidding on?
Well, you know what, if we put a bid opportunity out there, there's always a point to bid on it, because there's an awful lot of services that private companies do provide that the city does themselves. We have our own garage. But that doesn't mean that there aren't times where we have a garage that has the expertise to do what we needed to do most of the time. But every now and again, something comes along that probably is outside of our expertise, and we might bid that out. Similarly with our print shop. Most of our printing is done through our print shop. We have in-house expertise to do that. That's because it's a greater value to us to do that. We do enough printing, and our turnaround times are so high that by having staff to do it ourselves, it saves us a lot of money. We evaluate it. We look at those kind of things every so many years and go, does this still make sense? And it does. So when there is an opportunity of something that's outside our expertise, we will put that out, or we will phone around and ask for quotes to get that work. But we're not going to put something out there if we've got the service in-house to do it in a more effective way.
Right over there.
That's actually a really good question. From time to time, we go out and do a proposal for those kinds of services. We have been known to do banking, auditing, on certain intervals. Depends on the service, it depends on what we need. Those are the kind of services, though, where an ongoing relationship is really valuable. That, you know, you don't turn around and change your bank, you don't change your lawyer, because there's a big, long history of experience that's out there where it doesn't make sense to chop and change. So we do have longer established relationships, but the one I can speak to easily is audit, because I put that one out, and it goes out every 5 years, and we go out, we bid it out. As it's happened, we've picked the same auditor a few times, because the last time they had the best value. They had A, the lowest price, B, the most experience in municipal auditing, and that's how we chose it. Okay?
Okay, right up here, gentleman at the back.
I might as well just stay here.
Check.
You can direct your questions to the other cities too. They're anxious to answer.
Yeah, give them some questions.
Hello. With Customer.
Well, hopefully that doesn't happen very often, because we don't like having emergencies. And an awful lot of our emergency response is actually done by in-house staff. We have crews of people to do that kind of work. But if it's, you know, I use that as an example. If it's something we've never done before, we're going to do what everybody else does. We're going to go online and look on the web and go, who can we phone? Just, you know, responding practically. But if we have experience with certain companies, and they're in our file of these are the companies who we've used before, and we know they can do the work, that's who we're going to phone.
Hi, I'm Anna.
Hang on one sec, because if we don't use the mic, it doesn't get captured on the video, and we want to hear what you got to say. Aaron, did you break that mic, or what's going on?
Aaron, it's my fault. Thank you. My question is twofold, and I would love to hear from all three cities. You mentioned the informal projects. How do I bid on the informal projects? How do I become, besides sending in my marketing info to you guys when I get home, how do I get on your list into your Rolodex to be one of your preferred suppliers? And what value do you, what amount, what's the dollar value that is the informal project at for each city?
Yeah, just to speak to plumbing particularly, in Coquitlam, I'll let the others respond. In Coquitlam, I think it was in 2010, is it 2010 you went out to bid? One of our suppliers here that's on our panel actually is Sheehan Plumbing, and we have enough plumbing work that while those informal pieces are small enough that we'd phone around and get informal quotes, there's enough of that in aggregate it hits the threshold where we should go out and do a public bid. So we did a bid on that, I believe it was 2010. It was for a 5-year term, and we evaluated all the companies, and we ended up picking a local company that provided us the best service, the best response, and the best price. And so we have a supplier for a 5-year term. In 2015, that will come up again. If you're watching on your website, you can bid just like them and become that preferred contractor if you have the best value. That's because it's of a size in aggregate that we create value. So what happens is our purchasing staff watches the purchases. They watch all the informal ones, the ones that happen through credit cards, the ones that happen by, asking for informal tenders or informal price checks. And they watch, and when that gets big enough that, this isn't small anymore, this is actually pretty big, then we go out and we do an open, fair competition to who's going to be the guy that we can pick up and phone. And everybody has the same opportunity to get that work. Doesn't matter whether you're big or small. If you can provide the best value, you're going to win that contract. But then you're going to get it for a term, because there is absolutely no question that there is a benefit in terms of value to each of the cities to have those established relationships. When we know how you work and you know how I work or how our crews work, we can do better. We can become more efficient, and we can work better if we know each other. If we're starting fresh with a new person every time, it's harder. But everybody has the opportunity to get that work.
Yeah, in Port Moody, what we typically do is we'll go out periodically for what we call pre-qualified services. So, for example, on the plumbing, we will put the tender or the RFP out for those services, and we don't award to one. We may award to 3 to 5, and when that work arises, then on that list we will go to the first person. If they're busy, then we go to the second one, then we go to the third one, because we generally need these services right away. So they're what they're called pre-qualified. So that's how we handle that, and it's generally up to it's more for small dollar amounts when we're in sort of an immediate need for a plumber, electrician, those kinds of things. So that's how we handle them.
Coquitlam?
So we're very similar to Coquitlam and Port Moody. We do have a hired, I'll use this as an example, we have a hired equipment list. There's a closing date. If you were to look at our website, you'd see that it's ongoing. So if the closing date is January 31st, you would go in order of being qualified, and then of course the best value to the city. We still continue to accept after the closing date, because it's a list you're going through. And of course, if it's small businesses and they're tied up and we need a piece of hired equipment, you would go to the next person on the list. And that's on a first come. Once after the closing date, everyone's listed as long as they're pre-qualified. We do have on-call services as well. And we do look at the end of every year to look at the consolidated value. So if somebody's making a purchase for $10, but we notice that there's 1,000 of them, or 100,000 of them, we would be looking at that service at the end of the year to see if there's an opportunity and value to issuing a document to consolidate those purchases. With the new systems that we have in place for our finances, we're able to print reports pretty readily anytime to look at those opportunities and to look at the best value for the city in terms of prioritizing which is the highest value and starting to pick off that list.
Good. Stanley?
My name is Stanley Paulus. I'm an architect in Coquitlam. I've got a question for all three cities. We as architects have to work according to strict guidelines and bylaws initiated by the Architectural Institute of BC. And one of these is the tariff of fees. So we stand kind of a challenging situation where our fees have to be kind of close between a small firm and a large firm from Vancouver. And when it comes to kind of government municipal projects, probably you'd be looking at experience, and you compare a small firm like mine to a large firm that does, say if you're looking for a school building, and you get two firms kind of applying for the same project. One large firm from Vancouver has done maybe 100 schools, and maybe we've done 2 or 3 schools. So where do you draw the line in terms of, I mean, you mentioned earlier something about establishing a relationship and wouldn't move on from that. So basically that doesn't give us any chance. Thank you.
I don't think it doesn't give you a chance at all. I think if you, that's the kind of thing that we're going to put out to an RFP. We're going to ask for proposals. We're going to be looking at creativity and innovation. We will look at experience for sure. That's obviously, tried and true is helpful to us, but we will look at the whole package and what value does each provider bring, and we'll make that judgment. And it'll be a team of people that picks from that.
Anne Dussard from K4E Consulting. My question is actually for all three of the communities. Just before that, though, I want to say thank you very much for the workshop. I've now come to understand a little better what you mean by value, but I have a question about value. How much weight is given as you're calculating value to the fact that a company may be a local taxpayer? And, you know, in other words, doing business in the community and therefore paying taxes in the community. So this would be for all three.
That's a common question, and quite frankly, we value what they can deliver because they're in the community as opposed to the fact that they are in the community. We're trying to save money and save resources and create value for all of our taxpayers, some of which are businesses paying tax. So we want to reduce the cost for everybody, and we have certain obligations under the legislation to not bias by location. Right? All of that fair trade legislation, the sort of point behind it is to create open and fair bidding. So we strive to do that. How we recognize local talent and local business is by recognizing that we shouldn't just look at price, we should look at the value they bring. And there's all sorts of components to value, and there are some that there's definitely an advantage by being local. So we consider those things, but we consider them in the value that they bring, not their specific location. Because at the end of the day, what's local anyway? Is local Tri-Cities? Is local Coquitlam? Is local Greater Vancouver? You'd have to define what that is. And one of the things you have to be really careful about by putting barriers around location is that if we decide that, okay, we are going to give a competitive advantage to a local business, then what's going to stop Burnaby from saying, okay, well, if you guys won't let, if you give an advantage to Coquitlam, then we're giving an advantage to Burnaby. And then somebody, one of our businesses in Coquitlam, the perfect work for them's in Burnaby. It's not in Coquitlam. And all of a sudden they're at a disadvantage. The principle of that open, fair competition is no barriers. Everybody competes, and that way it's fair. And that's what we're striving to create.
Yeah, similar to what Sheena was saying, essentially what we do through an RFP process is we have a list of evaluation criteria, and obviously there's price, experience, and those kinds of things. Where local businesses can compete, maybe have a bit of an advantage, is on sort of the sustainability criteria, where they're closer, so they're using less gas, less emissions, those kinds of things, and also on the service side, so if they can get there quicker, we need that service fairly immediate, and rather than going to somebody in Burnaby, we're in Port Moody, a local business along St. John's who can be there within half an hour is where they're going to score more points. So as Sheena showing up on the slide, we have criteria, and they're all weighted in different ways. So I would think, as I think Sheena did mention too, the advantage is probably on the quicker to service the local municipalities, and also one of our goals is to reduce carbon emissions and gas and those kinds of things.
It's pretty much been said, I think, with Coquitlam and Port Moody. I was just going to use an example of fleet insurance, for example. Pretty much in every mall throughout the Tri-Cities, there's insurance companies, and often we'll get 3 different types of coverage from the local provider. But again, like Paul had mentioned, it is the service where the response time that the local businesses are going to have an advantage of. That was just an example I was going to give. It's, you know, we're having site meetings often. Perhaps it's in a document that it may say that we require it once a month. If you know, if there was a solution that we can provide something daily, I mean, that would be over the top, and of course it would take our resources. But those are the kind. I'm just giving you examples of where local would have an advantage.
Any other questions out there? Okay.
Hi, I'm Karen Clark with Alliance Printing in Coquitlam. I am a resident of Port Coquitlam, have been for 23 years. I was just curious, how much importance do you place on companies adhering to any government mandates, like whether they're provincial or federal? For instance, what I'm thinking of is FSC certification. If a company is compliant with all the rules of FSC certification, but doesn't necessarily want to spend the $10,000 on a badge that declares their compliance, how much is this part of the criteria you might use for if you had to source an outside printer? And also, thank you very much for today's workshop. I definitely got full value out of lunch.
I'll try. I'm not really aware of that particular certification. I don't really know what it is. I'm not a printing expert by any stretch. We do try to make sure that we comply with all legislation that we're supposed to provide or to comply with. And what will happen is, if that is something that is important, and I'm not personally aware of the importance of that and why, but that's why we have our evaluation teams to look at these things that are the experts in the area, because they would know that. Well, I don't know that, they would know that. And that's why we do this with a team of people. So we have experts that use the service, experts that may be responsible for the maintenance of the service, and then we have a professional that knows about the purchasing process. So by that team, presumably somebody would understand that legislation and how important it was to us. If it was important, we'd listen to it. If it wasn't, maybe we wouldn't.
Anything to add over there?
I would just say similar, if, as Sheena said, in the criteria, the person or the department that was procuring those goods, if that was very important to them, that would have a heavy weight in our evaluation. As Sheena said, if it wasn't, then it wouldn't carry much weight. So,
Karen?
So the certification that you mentioned, if we were going out for an RFP and we weren't aware of it, that's the beauty of the RFP, is that you would tell us that what kind of certification you would have. We would, the evaluation team, research what that certification is, look at the benefits of it, and be scored compared to the others. Yeah, if it's a higher standard, we would be looking at the whole package and the best value to the city, and looking at all the criteria points that were in the evaluation bullets in the document.
Thank you. My name is Toma Doring, and I own Benjamin Moore Tri-City. We've been in Port Coquitlam for 22 years. Again, thank you as well for putting this on. It's very informative. Sheena mentioned that you do in aggregate bids, and that Coquitlam is putting them out in 2015, early 2015, I assume.
Depends on the service.
Depends on the service. So I
cycle, because you obviously can't have a bid process for everything all at once. We only have so many resources, so we do a certain number each year and they roll.
Okay, so I assume that my materials, so paint for instance, would fall under that kind of a bid. That's the first question. And the second question is to the other communities, Port Coquitlam and Port Moody, do you also do this on a 5-year or annual basis? And if you do, when is your timeline up?
Paul, why don't you start that one?
On the paint specifically, I'm not sure. Is that a commodity with the cooperative purchasing group?
Some of the paint is road marking paint and that, but most of it is low dollar value type.
You want to come up, just tell us up here?
Well, I can elaborate on that. So the consortium that we have amongst all the municipalities in the Lower Mainland, there's a list of commodities that we bid as cooperatively. So they come up periodically. For example, our stationery, it might be a 5-year contract. So all the cities then pool their volumes, and then a lead, one of the local municipalities will take the lead on that commodity and pool the volumes and go out to market on it. So they come up various times, so I'm understanding that paint is one of those commodities, and there's probably
some paint, and we also do competitive bid because it's more the informal quotation. It's a smaller volume for those other jobs.
You have to come on up. It's okay. Come on up and just explain it. It's a good explanation. We just got to hear it.
Yes, some of the types of paint that we do buy are with the cooperative purchasing group, such as, I believe, the road marking paint. And what we will do for those other paint is it will typically be part of a restoration project or just an update. So it tends to be smaller dollar value. And for that, we would either do just an informal quotation, or most of our carpenters will buy that one-off with their purchase cards because it is smaller dollar value. It's a one-off rehab project.
Okay. If you have any other questions, just hold on to them. We're going to move on to our panel and get them, because they've been waiting patiently. They're feeling the power of being in the counselor's chair. So, guys, don't let go to your heads, okay? All right. So we got a panel of 4 businesses who do business with all 4 cities, I believe. And we're going to introduce them individually, and they're going to give us a 2-minute introduction of their business, why were you successful in getting the contracts with the cities, and your general sense of what it's like to work with a city. So if we can keep it to that, guys, that'd be great. I'm going to start down the far end here with Rick Sisson. He's the president of Coquitlam Towing and Storage. Rick, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company and doing business with the city.
Thank you very much. Ours is a family business. We've been in Coquitlam and Port Moody for 51 years now. We had our 50th anniversary last year. It was started by my father. And we have, for the last, I think, about 20 years, had the city contract with all 3 cities. Before that, there was really no contract. It was just kind of open for everybody type thing. Some of the things I've heard here today is like one thing that they're is quality of service and the facilities that you have and how well you know your product. And when you get a tender or RFP, you have to read through that very, very well, and to learn every aspect they're asking for, because if you don't read it over and over, you can miss something small, and you just don't want to do that. And this last time when we bid on the contract, it was new for me because I'd always had filed our previous tenders or RFPs by paper. This one I had to do electronically, and it was a surprise to me. I learned a lot quick about computers that I never knew, that they did more than play games.
And other things.
Anyway, like I said, I've been dealing with the city contract for 3 cities for, I think, about 15 years now. They've gone for tenders, and I've worked with the 3 cities because it's one package. And the very first contract I had, it was with just Coquitlam, and then it was Coquitlam and Port Moody, and then it was Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, and Port Moody. And it's been a learning experience every step, but the last 2 times it went very smooth.
Okay, that's great. So you guys bid towing services together? Is that the way it goes? Okay. And you'll learn to do other things on the computer now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I can do other things. Videos involved in that somewhere. Next up is from Sheehan Plumbing and Heating, Derek Nee. I think he's been in my basement replacing my water heater a couple times in the last 20 years. So, Derek, over to you.
Thank you. My name is Derek Nee. I'm president and owner of Sheehan Plumbing and Heating. This is a family business. I've owned Sheehan since 1991, since I purchased it from my uncle. The company was established in 1978, so we've been in the Tri-Cities for quite some time. We specialize mostly in residential, commercial, light industrial repairs, and retrofit. We do some renovations and the odd time new construction, not very often. And I don't know about anybody else, but procurement was not a word that I knew until I started dealing with the cities. And basically it's the acquisition of goods, services, and works from an external source. So, it's the way that the city uses the community to help them, provide the services they do. I think part of the reason that we've been successful with winning the tenders for the cities is because of our diversity. We're not just plumbers. We have a pretty diverse service that we offer to the cities. So it's kind of a one call does it all thing. But as Rick mentioned, when you are submitting a bid or an RFP, it is very critical to make sure that you read it very diligently and pay attention to all of the small details. It's usually the smaller details that make you successful in bidding. It's a very comprehensive document. The most recent one we did was at least 30 pages. And as mentioned on the original presentation, insurance, WorkSafe BC, occupational health and safety, hazardous situations, among many other things, are very, very important. You can't take anything for granted. Even the smallest details, as I mentioned, can make the biggest difference. Not only is it the information that they ask for that's very important, but the information that you provide that they don't ask for. You have to let them know that, how you can benefit the city by being the successful candidate. You have to show them your passion for success. The people involved in the procurement process are very competent and intelligent individuals, and they can identify the strengths and the flaws in a business very easily. You have to be honest and forthcoming with the information that they request, because they can pick out some pretty important information from a business by the way that they present themselves. Once you have been successful, it doesn't stop there. You have to fulfill your obligations and promises that you made when you submitted the RFP, and in doing so, it also gives you a better opportunity for future success when the next RFP comes up. If you prove yourself, then your chances of being successful next time are much greater. And at this time, I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce and the cities for hosting this event and giving us Chamber members this valuable information. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. Next up, Metro Motors, the reigning Tri-City Business of the Year, large division. I got to get that plug in there. Ken Zutz, who's their commercial sales manager. Ken, over to you.
Hi. Well, first off, thank you guys all for coming. My name is Ken Zutz with Metro Ford. I'm the commercial sales manager. I've been with the store for over 40 years. Metro has been in Port Coquitlam for number of years, since 1965.
Did you say 40 years you've been there?
I've been there actually more than 40 years, yes. I started washing cars.
Started when you were 5?
Yeah, well, yeah. Thank you. First off, I have to say that how you came across with that is exactly right. When you're doing business with a city, you have to make sure that you are looking at the document, understanding the document, and making sure that what you're putting on the document is correct and accurate. The worst that you can do is put something in the document that may or may not be exactly, you don't want to fudge anything. You want to make sure that you adhere to exactly what they're asking for and respond with something that you can actually supply and carry on from there. We do huge business with city municipalities in the multi-millions of dollars. It's huge for us. It's a huge portion of our business. We appreciate local government and the larger provincial government business that we get. It's not just the sales side, it's the service side and the body shop side that we get business in. I can't stress how important it is to make sure that when you do the documents that they're correct. At one time when I first started doing this business, I felt a little intimidated that Metro Motors and myself were doing business or trying to do business with a city municipality. That's gone away. The purchasing departments that we are currently doing business with are very conducive to wanting to do business with you folks out there. They want to give everybody an opportunity, because not only does it benefit you, but it benefits them if they happen to hook into another supplier that will actually feel that you're a partner. I'm finding most purchasing people now are looking at the value added component of a tender. So it's not necessarily, I heard a couple people mention something about pricing. Pricing is very important, there's no question about it. But it's what you bring to the table in value added components, which could get you the business, even though you might be slightly higher in dollar value. So again, price is important, but it's not everything. And we see that all the time. I think that's pretty much it on my side of it, and thank you very much, and thank you for the workshop.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Last but not least, from Mills Office Productivity, Mr. Scott Hussey, their Director of Sales. Scott?
Thank you. I'm one of the guys that's not from here. We're located in East Vancouver, and we were fortunate enough to win the cooperative deal for the office supply business, stationery you may call it. We call it office supplies now, which has changed drastically with a big company like Amazon that's hanging around. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're really making their way. We've had the contract now for 4 years, and recently they've extended it for another year. The best thing I think you guys could probably do is, by sitting in the chairs that you're sitting in, is to understand procurement. We spend a lot of time, Michelle is our sustainability manager, she's with me, but we spend a lot of time understanding how to write RFPs, and the majority of the time when we go and get a debrief, because we certainly win our fair share and we lose our fair share, but we find that it's what we're all talking about today. Everybody misses steps. When they're asking for value add, we're competing against $3 billion. We're a local organization, been around for 65 years. We're competing against $3 billion a year organizations, and everybody says right away, well, price. At the end of the day, it's not about price. Price is important. All things being equal, is what else can you offer? And we're about corporate social responsibility. We're about giving back. We're about all these other things that people really start to look at and go, wow, that's important to us, because we got to take care of our own world, our own BC, rather than the rest of the world. We want to be taking care of that, but if we can't fix our own house, how can we fix everything else? So we deliver by electric truck. We have blue, environmentally friendly totes that we deliver in, and when we do our RFPs, this is first and foremost because they grate. And I was going to ask you guys, when you do your RFPs, is it price points? It's point system, right? Price is at 70. We just did one with the provincial government. 70% was based on price. So it didn't matter what you have. If you don't have the best price, you don't have a chance. So it was interesting. That's why I was going to ask you guys that. How do you grade it? Is it price? Is it? And when we did it, when we answered here, price was important. It's usually number one. But what else have you to offer? And when I heard about, we're dealing against some like a $2 billion organization. How do you compete against price? It's when we do the value add. Our value add section usually in our RFPs, we don't have enough information, because we have so much value add that we can bring to the organizations. We talk about doing things different and relationships. Relationships are still important. If you don't have a relationship, we'll look at RFPs, we don't have a relationship, chances are we're not going to win it. We've sat in many meetings like this, procurement meetings. I just came back from the one up in Whistler last night with the I raced back this morning, get out of bed to be here to talk about procurement, because that's what they're talking about, is how the purchasing managers all get together and say, how are we going to make things better? And I think on Mill's side of it, we look at corporate social responsibility. What's the other things that we do? So. And sorry, one last thing is local. I know everybody said, well, you're not even from here. You're from East Vancouver. But local is defined. There's an article, I was down in the U.S., did a presentation on local, and they did an article on from Columbia Institute, ISIS, and Sauder School of Business, and it's about local, and it happened to be about office supply companies, lo and behold, and they did Mills, and they did the other two big players in it, and what they said was, a local organization will give back 5 times more to the community than a multinational. And a multinational organization will put 18% of their dollars into the community, where a local company, i.e. Mills, will put back 33% more into the community. And when I was down in the U.S. doing the presentation, everybody asked me for the article, because they couldn't define, people saying, well, we're local, but what does it mean? And now it's been quantified in this article, which is a really good, from Columbia Institute, which is, and it has nothing to do with office supplies, it just has everything to do with being local. And I know you guys are going to say, well, yeah, you're from Coquitlam, but you're from East Van, but local defines in our business, BC, so. Done.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry about the voice, but that's
all good. Any other questions for anybody, you panelists, our esteemed city colleagues? Anybody got any questions before we wrap it up? You got all your questions answered? Davide, you good? Okay. They'll be around. I'm sure they can answer questions. They'll be around if you want to come up one-on-one. Just a couple things before we close. I'd like to thank all our businesses here. 3 of them are chamber members, by the way, and I didn't pick them. So thanks to all you 4 of you guys for coming out. Thank you very much. A big round of applause for the people from the city for doing a really good job. It's a tough topic, and I think Sheena, you and your crew did a wonderful job explaining it. And she's very open. They're all open to questions afterwards. You can phone them up and ask questions. It's very transparent, the whole process. We at the Chamber would like to thank you all for coming out. We have a bunch of events coming up. You can look on our webpage. We have Chief Economist from TD Bank coming out next week. I think that one's nearly sold out. Small Business Week happens in the middle of October. Take a look at that. There's 5 events in 5 days, and there's lots of stuff going on. And if you're not a member of the Chamber, why not? And come see me, and we'll have a little chat. Thanks a lot, and have a great business day out there, and we'll see you down the road.